Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I do hope everyone's having a great week out there so far. There is much to cover in this morning's video, and the first thing we'll go over is the tropics. We'll get very detailed. There are signs that things are going to begin to wake up out here in the Atlantic as we get into August, which isn't really nothing unusual. August and September are typically the 2 months where we see the most tropical activity with any given hurricane season. But the common theme out here is going to be a lot of tropical wave activity. But is anything going to develop? If it does, will it threaten anybody? We'll compare all model guidance after that. We'll give you an update on this cool down that will impact a good chunk of the lower 48, and then we'll round the video off, of course, with an update on today's weather. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. Let's make sure this is going to work for us. First, it is. So really just one thing to circle out here in the Atlantic, and that is this tropical wave or whatever's left of it out here in the Atlantic. It is still, it still has some shower and storm action with it, but we're not seeing this deep convection that we were seeing, say, yesterday morning. And we know that because we're not seeing a lot of cold cloud tops. I mean, there is some greens and some yellows and some oranges and some reds, but not much of it, especially of those orange and reds. Not like if you compare it to, say, this over areas of Central America and like northern areas of South America. This is a great example down here of those colder cloud tops, the blacks embedded in the reds and orange, and that white embedded in the black. This indicates really cold cloud tops, which means that these updrafts are getting really far up in the atmosphere. The further up you get, of course, the colder it gets. And we're just not seeing that much with this tropical wave. And it's because dry air is affecting it. It's not able to sustain that convection. And listen, most model guidance showed this. So this isn't really a surprise to anyone. But the big question is, can this tropical wave survive some hostile conditions and eventually maybe get into this area, maybe the Southwest Atlantic, and try to redevelop whatever's left of it? And then, of course, we got to watch more tropical wave activity behind this one that's not really showing up on your screen because it's still over portions of Africa. But this could emerge over the Atlantic also, and we're going to show you all this in model guidance here in a second. So let's get all this back off your screen. Now, the latest from the National Hurricane Center, they're saying no tropical activity expected between now and the next 7 days. So it's not like they're not seeing what we're seeing. They're just saying, hey, they don't think anything's going to develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm between now, like I said, in the next 7 days or so. So moving past this, let's go over the latest model guys. This is the latest Euro, and this is our tropical wave that we just circled on the satellite there just a second ago. So this is what the model was showing is it. And I mean, hey, it makes sense. It's a very weak lower pressure out here. It's saying it's around a 10-13 millibar low as we start off around midday today. So let's get this in motion. As we start to get into tomorrow morning, it really completely fizzles this out. I mean, it just looks like just some shower and storm activity out here in the MDR, main development region, which is what this is out here. So it completely just fizzles this wave out. Now there's still some energy there, and as we get into Friday, maybe more of an uptick in energy here. But still not much. You can't really tell what's on your screen here. And then we get into Saturday morning. You can see a little bit of an open wave here, but there's not much. And then you see some action behind it way back out here in the eastern Atlantic. And you keep this going, and that wave very slowly drifts into the Southwest Atlantic. And then we'll kind of jump back to this here in a second. But look right out here, too. We continue to get about a week out. And there is another tropical wave that emerges off Africa, gets over the central Atlantic. Literally a week from right now, there'll be another tropical wave where the current one is right now. And then signs, at least in model guys, and yes, this is very far out. It's between day 7 and day 10. Shows this tropical wave having a little bit more of a chance to develop based off this particular run right here. And then we get past day 10. There really isn't a whole lot that goes into anything past day 10, so we might as well stop it here. But a little bit of a closer look of the leftovers of the current tropical wave that's over the central Atlantic right now. By Monday morning, model guidance shows this kind of north of the Greater Antilles, starting to get closer to the Bahamas. This is it right here. It doesn't seem like much, and it very slowly creeps its way closer to the southeast about a week to 8 days from now. You can barely see it, but it's right in here. But I want you to watch. You'll be able to see it more here in a second. We get to about the 10-day mark, and we're still looking at this tropical wave if model guidance is correct. There's another one right behind it. Here's one right here too. And watch how this wave tries to get something going here. You can't really tell. And I'm going to look at the low-level vort map here in a second. And there is something trying to get going here. Now, there's another wave behind it that tries to get going also, but this gets like into the 300-hour range, so not a very reliable time frame. But the common theme, just like I said in the beginning of the video, is a lot of tropical wave activity. Now, we look at, say, the GFS. This is the one from overnight. Same thing. Well, we'll start this off for Thursday morning, so tomorrow morning. That wave is right here. You can barely see it. Literally just an open wave cruising and impacting the lesser and greater Antilles, but not bringing really any impact except just normal run-of-the-mill shower and storm activity. That wave kind of sneaks into the southwest Atlantic. Is there anything out here that shows also as we get between that day 7 and day 10 frame? The GFS says no. There's no tropical wave really activity out here that's eye-popping or anything like that, right? So a little bit closer look from the overnight GFS closer to home. All right, does it show anything with the current tropical wave? You can barely see it, but it's right into here. There is a lower pressure right into here, sort of east of the Bahamas, and this is getting after day 7. It actually takes the leftovers of that tropical wave after it struggles for so long, and around the day 10 mark tries to develop this into a quick tropical cyclone and hit South Carolina. 282 hours out, by the way. Very unreliable time frame. But it's interesting that model guidance keeps teasing in the idea that we'll be dealing with the current tropical wave over the central Atlantic for another 10 to 15 days. And then we'll just have to watch any activity behind it. Now, there is a new GFS run. What does it show? Okay, that's our tropical wave right here. Our current one, which is over the central Atlantic, by this coming Sunday, makes it to about right here. Does it do something similar like what the overnight GFS does? No, it does not. And it doesn't really show much behind it either. So the latest GFS doesn't really show that scenario with that wave surviving. So I think a good way to kind of pinpoint all this energy in the atmosphere is the Euro. If we look at the low-level VOR, 850 millibars, this is energy in the low levels of the atmosphere. We kind of look at this when the precipitation output that I just went over for a few minutes doesn't really show us the picture well, and it really doesn't because we don't have any kind of defined tropical activity out there showing up on model guides. But if you look at the low-level VOR here, you could see that tropical wave as we get into this weekend, sort of north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. But it really doesn't show up much at weekends, and then it tries to get its act together again right in here. And then there's another wave. It's hard to even tell if this is the same wave, but I believe it is. It's tough, though. But this is kind of the leftovers of that wave that's over the Atlantic right now. And then look at the more stronger one back here at day 10, emerging into the southwest Atlantic. Now, I know that looks eye-popping on your screen, but that's still a pretty weak low pressure. So, listen, the general theme from all of this is that I think we'll get a lot of tropical wave activity. Is anything going to turn into anything tropical? It's tropical, but is anything going to turn into an all-out tropical cyclone? The sea surface temperatures in an area that these waves are really liking to go in model guidance, which is kind of right in here, right? This is the southwest Atlantic. It's pretty warm. I mean, this is in Celsius, 29, 30 degrees Celsius. That's equivalent to like the mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit. So the waters are very warm in this area. But of course, warm sea surface temperatures, that's not the only thing you look at. You still got to look at the upper wind pattern. The upper wind pattern does look a little bit more favorable if anything can survive and get into this area right here. So the thing really is does it survive between where it starts and into this area? If it doesn't, then it ain't going to get going in here. It could. There could be some leftover energy, but yeah. So you look at the latest Euro ensemble run. This makes up 51 members, right? First off, there's a lot of low pressure shooting off the mid-Atlantic coastline, and I'll talk about why here in a second. Okay, but here's our little wave. I mean, there's only 3 or 4 members out of 51. It's not a very strong signal, but the members that do survive, as we're getting about 7 to 8 days out, do try to develop. I mean, we got one or two stronger low pressures. We got a really strong one that's an anomaly, like a 969 millibar low. But one thing you see behind this, and this only goes 10 days out, there are signs that things begin to, it's not a huge sign, but there are signs that, there is going to be some tropical wave activity out here. Now, another way to look at this, guys, that it's going to be a little bit harder to see on your screen. That's why I don't show it, but it goes a little bit further out. And I'm going to just do this on the fly for you folks. And let's go down to this. Let's go down to the Caribbean. Let's look at this. Hopefully you can see this well on your screen. But even that doesn't show a whole lot, to be honest with you. But if you kind of look at this goes past 240 hours out. There shows a couple members with a very strong storm system, but honestly, the Euro ensemble is not a very high-end signal. The one yesterday, let's look at the one yesterday, showed a stronger signal. So we're kind of getting some flip-flopping back with the models, but I think the common theme is tropical wave activity. So you take from all that information that if anything can survive the still hostile conditions out there in the tropical Atlantic and get a little bit closer, it will have a shot to develop. Now, I think something that has more of a shot to develop, and our next name, by the way, is Dexter, is maybe some homegrown activity, kind of a frontal type system. Basically, there's going to be a stalled cold front getting into this weekend across the eastern U.S. Going to bring a lot of rain, by the way, soggy weekend. And we could get a low pressure that pops off the mid-Atlantic coastline, and it shows it right here as we're getting into Friday and Saturday. And this could actually gain some tropical characteristics as it will be flirting with kind of a thermal gradient out there with these sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic. So it'll be really close to some warmer sea surface temperatures. That actually can be really sneaky and take a name really fast. But it won't bother anybody as it, pops off the eastern seaboard. And I would watch some activity down here too as we get into the later portion of the weekend, early next week. Something tropical could get going in this region here if we can get some energy that gets off the coastline for long enough. So some brief information on this cool down. That's it with the tropics for now. The bluer and the greener colors on your screen, this is cooler than average temperatures. The warmer looking colors like the orange and reds and stuff like that, these are warmer than average temperatures. So this is starting off today, and what you'll notice is as we get into Friday, as we get into Saturday, below average temperatures. Look to take over a good chunk of the country, the middle the country, the northern plains, the northern Rockies, all the eastern U.S. This is going to be nice. But just remember that just because you're below average temperature-wise, that does not mean that you're going to have that crisp, dry, fall-like air. For the south, this is still going to be pretty humid air with a touch of dryness, maybe a couple mornings. It's going to allow your temperatures to probably dip maybe into the upper 60s, but this cooler than average pattern kind of sticks around with us. It knocks down the heat. We'll start to warm up as we get into midway next week, about a week from today. Still hanging on to around average or slightly below average temperatures, but eventually most of the country does warm up. Now, I will tell you a little bit closer look at the southeast. It's interesting. This is Saturday afternoon across the southeast. Look at the Carolinas and the Georgia. That's 5 to 10 degrees below average up into the mid-Atlantic. And then look around midday to early afternoon Sunday. Atlanta to Columbia, 10 to 12 degrees below average. So if your average high is around 90 to 92 degrees, you could get highs in the upper 70s, the low 80s, which is what's being forecasted for some of these areas. Now, this isn't a nice, sip your coffee on the porch where your temperatures are going to be in the upper 50s in the morning, and it's going to be a crisp day with highs in the upper 70s. No, it's not going to be like that. But it is going to be very, very nice. And I do think some of our mornings will be very comfortable. But then as we start to get, say, into Monday, still well below average temperatures situated across these regions. And in fact, you look at high temperatures, and I know I got loyal viewers here in the Carolinas. This is where I started talking about weather, so I know I'm being a little biased here. But if we look at high temperatures predicted for Friday, August the 1st, very warm still, right? Georgia and South Carolina, lower areas of North Carolina, still just baking, 90s, typical summer type stuff. We go from Friday to Saturday. Some areas will drop 10 to 15 degrees as far as our high temperature. So this is Saturday. Highs only in the low 80s from Columbia to Augusta to Atlanta, up to Charlotte. You get into the Piedmont and Triad of North Carolina, highs only in the upper 70s. And then Sunday, I think, could be even cooler for a more widespread area. And then Monday, we could begin to wake up. Now, as far as those low temperatures, you know, how cool can it get, right? Look, some 60s showing up across Georgia and the Carolinas, and some upper 50s up into Virginia. Very nice. I'm going to be so happy when we get sub 70 degrees. It has not gotten below 70 degrees here in my neck of the woods in quite some time, I think since June. So as far as today's weather, let's go over this. And making this video a little bit later. It took me forever to get this video going this morning, guys. I had to restart it over like 25 times. Some mornings are like that. But anyways, the longer it takes me to get to this panel right here, the more that this radar glitches out. So we're going to pause it here. There is a line of storms going across Iowa, getting into northern Illinois, southern areas of Wisconsin. A little bit of rain behind it back in Nebraska, Kansas, South Dakota. Some rain dancing around down here in the Gulf Coast line. A little bit of rain in South Carolina. And let's see. That's not glitching anymore, so that's good. But there's an emotion, just energy rounding around this ridge out here. Nothing unusual about that. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Heat continues to be a big story. Extreme heat warnings in that purple color you see here. Heat advisories in those orange counties and parishes, including Louisiana. Heat advisories up the I-95 corridor into southern New England. New York City and around that area has an extreme heat warning. Urban Heat Island doing its thing out here. Some flood watches up here in the Midwest. So moving forward here and looking, say, at the Storm Prediction Center, no real risk, no huge risk, I would say, of severe weather today. Now, we're going to have severe storms, but we're not going to have a higher end day of severe weather. Just 3 marginal risks, one across the plains, one across the Midwest, and one across areas of New England to the Mid-Atlantic. And then we look at the risk of excessive rainfall. The yellow area, 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance. And this area also across areas of the Midwest. Now, speaking on the Southeast, I'm not going to really zoom into any states with this. Just pop-up thunderstorm activity embedded in this ridge, a little bit of flow in place just because of the repositioning of this ridge. But this is around the middle of the afternoon. We got thunderstorm activity really anywhere across the Southeast. I mean, you see it popping up. It's going to be outflow boundary driven, meaning some areas are going to get totally whiffed, and then maybe your neighbor down the street 5 miles up the road is going to get an inch of rain. That has been the common theme around my house over the last 2 days. We've picked up 1/10 of an inch of rain, but there's been areas around town that's picked up about 2-3 inches of rain. So it just happens like that sometimes. A lot of people ask me all the time, Mitch, I mean, this is probably the most common thing in the summertime in the South that people ask me, Mitch, why do you think that Billy Bob Town, and obviously I'm being funny, Billy Bob Town, North Carolina, never gets rain? And all I can tell them is it's just bad luck. Trust me, we used to have some, I remember, I think it was 2018, 2017, something like that. We had like a 25, 30-day stretch where we barely got any measurable rain in the middle of summer. But areas around me in like a 10-mile radius got enough rain. But my grass was turning, I got a picture of it too. My grass was turning, everybody's grass looked like hay. Of course, if you go more than 10 days without rain in the summer in the South, it don't take long for your grass to start, showing up a little bit in that light green color. It's so hot. I mean, you need some consistent rain. So I get it. Going off on my side story, I'm good for that. But just pop-up thunderstorm activity, guys. And listen, we're going to start to see more widespread activity as we get deeper into this week, into this weekend. But the Northeast, there ain't a whole lot to speak on. There's a marginal risk, but I'll tell you, the HRRR model doesn't show a whole lot of thunderstorm activity in this area down here. But any of these storms that form kind of along the I-95 corridor, especially west, they could pack a punch. It just, this particular run don't really show a whole lot. Could be a line of storms that works into northwest Ohio later tonight into tomorrow morning. It's waking up to a big chunk of rain here in northern Ohio tomorrow morning in southern Ontario. The north central U.S., the only area I would say watch out for besides normal just thunderstorm activity in Louisiana, Arkansas. Positioning of this high pressure is kind of, right over Texas. So, I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of rain over Texas, but some thunderstorm activity over the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. We got some thunderstorms up there in Kansas, you see, especially in the eastern areas of the state. But a lot of energy could pop off the Rockies here in Colorado. And just a closer look, we could get a lot of rainfall in these areas. And we start to get to 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Just watch out for this thunderstorm activity, some small hail possible, some flooding rains. And then we get into the evening hours, and this begins to make its way into eastern Colorado. The north-central U.S. will watch this line of storms that tries to re-get going here. You can see in southeast Iowa, more storms firing, and then we'll get more storms that begin to sink around this ridge of high pressure into Missouri, into Illinois. So we'll have this line of storms working its way through. Some additional thunderstorms could develop back in Nebraska, northwest Iowa. More of just a solid rainfall up here in like Chicago maybe. But you could definitely get a thunderstorm out of this too. We got heavy rain up here in the southern areas of lower Michigan. Could get some thunderstorms overnight in the southern areas of lower Michigan, northern Indiana, and like I said, northwest Ohio earlier. But just a closer look at some of these areas. This is Missouri, and we get into about 4 p.m. Those are some nasty thunderstorms showing up in northern, really northeast Missouri. Might end up getting a marginal to slight risk upgrade up here, but some large hail is possible, some damaging winds. And these storms do look like they can pack a punch. It's around 7 p.m., the Kansas City to Columbia to St. Louis corridor. On and off thunderstorms down here to Clinton, Aurora. And these thunderstorms will continue to sink through central and then into southern Missouri later tonight. St. Louis probably going to get them a good thunderstorm later this evening. And watch out for some flash flooding with this too. We could get a lot of rain in these areas. So be aware of these thunderstorms. And then Illinois and Indiana. Right after lunchtime, some more thunderstorms could enter the state. This is 4 p.m. Galesburg getting hit hard. Davenport, Peoria gets hit around 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Quincy getting hit. Springfield, 7. Champaign, you guys get hit around 8 p.m. Storms continue to make their way into northern Indiana later in the evening, I would say, and I'll have to see if they maintain themselves, if they affect Lafayette, South Bend, Fort Wayne in the late evening to overnight hours. So out west, a lot of thunderstorm activity in central to eastern Wyoming. Some rain is possible in northern California, northern Nevada, getting all the way up into central Oregon. So we'll watch out for that. And just a closer look at Wyoming here as we're getting to 4, 5, 6. Thunderstorms are possible near Cody, Worland, Sheridan, Rawlins, up to Casper. This is 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Gillette could get hit by some storms, 10, 11, 12, and then we're about done. Temperatures, hot all the way up to southern New England, but cooler air is on the way, but it's going to be another very hot day across just the eastern U.S. and the southern tier of the country. But you can tell cooler air has slipped into the northern areas of the country. It's just 70s and 80s for highs. Western U.S., pretty darn warm. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I made it through that video pretty fast. Dang. That was a struggle. Like I said, I had to start that video over about 20, 25 times. Just sometimes this is hard to get going. So anything else I want to add? Yeah, no Bible devotion this morning. I'm going to double up Thursday and Friday. Wednesdays, I've switched my days up. Wednesdays are my rest days where I get up a little bit later. So the Bible devotions will probably be something like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then I'll probably do one morning on the weekends. And maybe one of these days we can get to them when we're doing every single morning. So always trying to tweak my routine. But y'all have a wonderful day. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk soon. God bless.